Welcome to Cybersecurity Awareness TV, episode 366, recorded September 11th, 2021. I would like to recognize all of our fellow Americans who we lost on this day, September 11th, 2001, and give blessings to their families. We will always remember you, and God bless. Cybersecurity Awareness TV will educate and inform you on news, interviews, and tips on how to protect yourself and your business from the fastest growing crime of the 21st century. My name is Mack Jackson Jr. I'm a cybersecurity consultant. My background is in cybersecurity awareness, business consulting. My programs and services will help protect you and your family from these fastest growing crimes so you could be on top of what's going on in the world of cyber attacks to protect yourself. I would like to thank everybody who's been a part of our show from around the world to help support Cybersecurity Awareness TV. Our listeners have given us information that we are presenting to you that is very, very valuable in how to protect yourself from these cyber criminals. To find out more information on cybersecurity awareness and my services, you can go to my website at mackjacksonjr.com. That's MackJacksonJr.com. Or call me at 702-868-0808. Remember, folks, to share, like, and subscribe to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In today's episode, our first episode we're covering is called Cyber News. In our Cyber News, we'll talk about the rise of ransomware. Folks, if you're not sure what ransomware is, you definitely want to listen to this segment. It's very, very important. It protects you and your business. We're going to talk about how cybersecurity poses the biggest threat of terrorism for the U.S. We're going to talk about why the U.S. cannot stop cyber attacks. In our second segment, we're going to talk about COVID-19 vaccine passports. And folks, yes, that's right. Cyber criminals are already trying to victimize people regarding the vaccine shots, and ways to protect yourself will be covered in this segment. Our third segment, folks, we're speaking on our weekly tips on cybersecurity protection, what you can do today to protect yourselves from these criminals. In our segment, Cyber News. Cyber attacks on a global scale are rising daily. Hackers seek vulnerable businesses and individuals where hackers' primary objective is to financial gain and to exploit companies' businesses. You can avoid this kind of exploitation by understanding certain techniques to protect your data. However, every day hackers are trying to find out ways to get past those things that you're doing to protect yourself. We have ways to show you. In this upcoming video, you're going to see how cybersecurity is being fought right now against criminals using ransomware. Roll this clip.
20 years since September 11th, 2001. Our Eamon Javers this morning has a look at the next set of threats, what they might be and what they might not be. Morning, Eamon.
Good morning, Carl. When intelligence experts look back on September 11th, they think of it as a failure, most of all, of imagination. Collectively, they simply couldn't imagine airplanes being used in suicide attacks. And today, they worry that the same failure of imagination could be happening again, this time in cybersecurity. I talked to retired Admiral Mike Rogers this week. He's the former head of the National Security Agency, and he told me why he's worried.
It's fair to say the only limit broadly in cyber these days is the limits of the imagination, because there's almost no limit to what you can do.
Rogers said he worries that the hacks that we've seen so far don't even come close to the potential damage a truly evil attacker could cause. He worries about attacks on critical infrastructure like the one on Colonial Pipeline this year. An adversary could time an attack for the most damage and even stagger a series of attacks to cripple our ability to respond to each one. But he also worries about more insidious attacks where the target is American society itself.
So how could you increase the pressure on our society? We're in the middle of a pandemic. What could I do that would impact medical care? What could I do that could impact vaccine distribution, production, What could I do that would exacerbate economic inequality? What could I do that would forestall economic recovery in the middle of this economic challenge that we have had as a result of the pandemic?
Rogers told me that the January 6th insurrection shows that we are vulnerable as maybe never before to attacks designed to stoke violence among Americans. He says the key is prevention, but also resiliency, the knowledge that bad things can happen in this world no matter what you do, and the ability to absorb shocks and keep moving forward. Back over to you guys.
Eamon, that's such a key point. You know, our colleague at NBC News, Kelly O'Donnell, was asked how 9/11 changed her career, at least. She said it was a moment in which you realized you had to begin to think about the unthinkable and make that envelope of possibilities bigger in your mind. On the other hand, a lot of the discussion this morning has been about the country's ability to rebuild after episodes like 9/11, like the pandemic, and even January 6th.
Right. And when Rogers talks about resiliency, he's talking about the ability to sort of absorb these things and keep going. But he's also talking about the ability to see them coming in the first place. Right. And so you have to have the intelligence apparatus out there. You have to have the defense apparatus out there. Ultimately, though, you can't think of everything that could go wrong in the world. And he worries that when people try to do that, they see an enemy around every corner. And he does not think that that's where America needs to go either. So there's a way to do this and a way not to do it. Carl.
In this clip, folks, you have noticed all the things that our government is doing to protect ourselves from these cyber criminals. Ransomware is definitely on the rise, and we need to be able to protect ourselves. And information is the new form of currency and is very, very valuable. The information you got from this show, please share it with someone else that you know so we can protect ourselves from these type of cyber thieves. Now, our next clip, we talk about why the U.S. cannot stop cyber attacks. In this clip, we will talk about how the U.S. has gone after these cyber criminals. We can find them under any crevice that they crawl in. We will find them, and we will eradicate them as well. In this clip, you will see examples of that.
This is probably the most significant ransomware attack on one of our critical infrastructures ever.
Colonial Pipeline is the operator of the largest pipeline carrying fuel from the Gulf Coast to the Northeast. It was hit with a ransomware attack.
Last month, hackers took our gasoline hostage. Now they're attacking our meat supply.
JBS says units in Australia and North America were hit over the weekend by what the company is calling an organized cyber attack on its information system.
The U.S. recently faced a series of ransomware attacks, and they aren't showing signs of slowing down anytime soon.
Although ransomware has really been around since 2013, it has not yet been seriously taken in terms of something that could impact critical infrastructure such as the pipeline.
Ransomware, a program that hackers use to hold digital information hostage, has become the top choice of malware for criminals. Mack Jackson Jr. negotiates these hostage situations for victims.
We have a 911 line, similar to how you would have a 911 for the police if you need to call. So we'll get an email from a client or an insurance carrier or a law firm saying that they have someone who was just hit with ransomware. And the next steps is for us to assemble and get on a call.
And lots of money is at stake. In 2020, the total amount of ransom paid by the victims reached nearly $350 million worth of cryptocurrency, a 311% increase compared to the previous year. Plus, it takes a serious emotional toll on the victims.
Violated. They have gotten into our network and into places that we don't know where they've gotten. We don't know what systems they have touched. It is definitely a moment of realization that the things you thought you were protected from, the layers that you had in place, they wrote around them. They customized their attack and wrote systems to infiltrate and destroy.
So what led to the rise of ransomware in the US, and what makes it so difficult to fight them? What makes ransomware so effective is its capability to entirely disrupt an enterprise or infrastructure like the Colonial Pipeline. It usually makes its way in via a phishing email or network connection that isn't secured, encrypting the victim's file to prevent access. The malicious actor then demands a ransom in exchange for decrypting the files held hostage.
Highest I've ever seen was about 70 million.
This is Mack Jackson Jr., and he has a job like no other. As the managing director at Arete Incident Response, he is on the front line in a battle against ransomware in the United States.
In the beginning of 2020, we started to see a new trend that is now prevalent throughout the industry, where not only did they encrypt your data, but they also had stole that data, and then they threatened to post or leak that data if the ransom isn't paid. So that really has driven up the ransom demand, because from the victim's perspective, you have to consider, well, we need to pay to get our data unlocked, or do we pay to have that not leaked?
The negotiation then takes place in a chat room on the dark web that can be located via a unique identifier included in a digital ransom note. That's where Bleicher speaks with the bad actors on behalf of the victims.
These sites have a chat feature, much like you'd see on any retail site if you had a question about a product. And that's how you get the conversation going, is you start a conversation within the chat that's on their site.
If the victim makes up their mind to pay the ransom and the amount is negotiated, the payment is made via cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is the most popular choice, accounting for 98% of ransomware payments in the first quarter of 2019. That may change now that U.S. officials were able to seize $2.3 million in Bitcoin paid to hacker group DarkSide following the Colonial Pipeline attack. Once the payments have been made, the criminals send a decryption key, and the cycle goes on to repeat itself with another vulnerable business or infrastructure.
I can tell you over the last 2 years, I mean, it's well into the millions, hundreds of millions, the victims that we've come across.
Ransomware has grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry, and surprisingly, a majority of the ransom paid is shared amongst a relatively small number of criminals. A recent study found that 199 deposit addresses received 80% of all the funds in 2020, and an even smaller group of 25 addresses accounted for nearly half. The hacking syndicate behind these attacks are often highly organized with self-given names like Evil Corp or DarkSide.
We have to all realize that the cyber crime ecosystem is a business. It is a large underground business. It has all elements similar to a legitimate legal business. And so there are partnerships, and there is malware developers, and there are distributors.
First and foremost, I'm a security practitioner. Most of us never thought that we would get into a situation where we would be negotiating for essentially the life of a company.
These groups have become increasingly bold, showing off bundles of cash and fancy sports cars. That's because tracking, arresting, and bringing these hackers to justice is incredibly difficult.
It's notoriously difficult to attribute cyber attacks. It's an ongoing challenge for governments. And so from an organization's perspective, whether it's a criminal group or whether it's a nation-backed group, it often has little consequence.
A lot of these organizations are allowed to essentially operate freely within Russia or other former Soviet states, as long as they don't hit anybody within that country or former Soviet state. So unless there's a cooperation at the political level there, I don't see this going away anytime soon. Look how much money has been shelled out over the last 5 years, let alone the last 2. It's mind-blowing. So it's a booming industry.
Ransomware attacks impact almost every sector of the American economy.
Unfortunately, it's become a bit of the sort of classic modus operandi for many hackers and criminals. And what you're seeing also is that it's pretty indiscriminate in terms of the industry sectors that it targets.
In 2020, professional and public service and manufacturing were the 3 industries that were hit the hardest, followed closely by healthcare, technology, and finance. In 2020, a ransomware attack may have also claimed its first life after taking a hospital offline in Germany.
It has a real cost. There was a study done by Barron's early in January that said that the estimated cost of ransomware in 2019 was about 11.5 billion. In 2020, it is 20 billion. It didn't exactly double, but it got close enough to doubling. So there's a real financial cost to businesses around ransomware.
Ransomware has also grown sophisticated enough to target government entities and critical infrastructure in recent years, resulting in costly shutdowns.
It's disturbing that there are people out there that would take down systems for, things like healthcare, things like government. We provide water for our city as well as many other cities. They have no concern or care for their fellow human. It's disturbing.
In May of 2021, the city of Tulsa experienced several technical difficulties following a ransomware attack.
You may try to open up Microsoft Word, for example, and it won't open. Part of its system was actually encrypted. Or you may try to open up a document that you created. That document is encrypted, and so it can't read it.
Besides the inconvenience, being a victim of ransomware can be a harrowing experience.
There's a range of emotions. Some clients are extremely angry. One of the questions is why can't our government go after these organizations? A lot of these victims are also in shock too, how could this happen to us?
Violated. They have gotten into our network and into places that we don't know where they've gotten. We don't know what systems they have touched. It is definitely a moment of realization that the things you thought you were protected from, the layers that you had in place, that they wrote around them. They customized their attack and wrote systems to infiltrate and destroy.
In order to stop the money flowing into the industry, the US government has historically discouraged individuals and businesses from paying their hackers. In fact, according to the Department of Treasury, paying the ransom to criminals is illegal if the hackers demanding the ransom were subject to US sanctions. But this leaves many businesses in a tricky situation.
If you're an organization that's been struck by ransomware, it's a tough situation to be in. It's not ideal to be paying these ransoms. These are criminal organizations, and of course, there is a whole effort, law enforcement at government level, to stave that activity. And clearly, paying ransom fuels the industry.
And even if the business chooses not to pay the ransom, there is the cost of recovery to consider. The average cost of recovery from ransomware attacks ballooned to $1.85 million in 2021, more than doubling from the previous year. That makes the average cost of recovery 10 times bigger than the size of the actual ransom payments.
We don't know the total cost at this point because we're in the middle of recovery. Would it cost more than the ransom? Quite potentially, yes.
The shutdowns are incredibly costly. They're labor intensive. They require experts, of which often we don't have enough.
The challenge for us is that they encrypted partial systems. And so basically we have to go through and check every single system and verify that A, it's not damaged, B, it's not got something on it from the actual attacker, and then C, that it can still be used for production. It's a long and arduous process to do that damage assessment. And the larger your network is, the larger your application base is, the more disruptive it can be.
The 2021 Colonial Pipeline incident sent shockwaves across the oil industry and the US government, alerting them on the severity of cybersecurity concerns. Shortly after, President Biden signed an executive order to strengthen US cybersecurity defenses. With nearly half of the congressional districts across America hit by some sort of ransomware attack from 2013 to 2020, voices in support for more regulations are growing.
These are criminals that hit us in our communities. They lock up our schools, our hospitals, our government agencies, and we need to put an end to it. And there are a number of things I think the administration can do, but it's going to take a collective defense effort. It's going to take industry, government, and international partnerships.
Federal law doesn't directly address ransomware attacks. It's instead covered under a broad umbrella of cybercrime laws like the Electronic Communications Privacy Act and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Congress has instead focused more on providing state and local governments with enough resources to fight against cyber attacks. In 2018, President Trump established the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, to improve cybersecurity across all levels of government. Meanwhile, House lawmakers rolled out a bill to invest $500 million in state and local cybersecurity in May 2021.
At both the state and local government, I don't think we have enough guidance on this from a legal perspective yet. I don't think it's clear enough. I think the law needs to address these situations where companies are forced to either go out of business or they pay the ransom. What are we doing for companies that are in that position? Additionally, how are we incenting companies to do the right thing and be prepared relative to ransomware?
Some states like Michigan, California, and Wyoming have taken matters into their own hands, passing laws that make it illegal to even possess any sort of ransomware. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, especially when it comes to critical infrastructure. Roughly 85% of America's critical infrastructure is privately owned, and private sectors aren't required to follow the strict cybersecurity guidelines set by the government.
From a critical infrastructure standpoint, there's an awful lot we need to do to make this a better secured system. But we've got electrical grids in this country. We have water systems, we have pipelines, we have a lot of critical infrastructure that is really open to some of these ransomware attacks and cyber attacks, and we need to do a much better job with them.
However the US might prepare against future threats, one thing is for certain. The recent series of attacks on American businesses and the government isn't the end, but the start of many future ransomware attacks to come.
We have to be prepared that it will happen again. We've dealt with smaller incidents of ransomware where a single person's files were affected, and we just restored from backup and moved on. But I think the reality is right now, it's something we have to be prepared for at any time.
The amount of impact it's going to continue to have will grow. And I think the amount of money to be made will continue to grow. I don't know where that will peak out. And I don't know if it's just going to morph into something even more dangerous and scary. It's hard to say, but I don't think we're at the peak yet.
Interesting clip, folks. Very, very interesting. As it may seem, the U.S. may seem that it's not doing much about cybersecurity and how these hackers are stealing and victimizing companies and businesses. But folks, let me tell you what's going on in the background. Our U.S. security force is definitely working vigorously on prosecuting these cyber criminals. Every day, there's a group of cyber criminals that are being found out and prosecuted. For example, a couple months ago, one of the biggest cyber criminals organizations that have victimized over 1,500 American businesses called Are Evil. This organization was found out by our government and internationally prosecuted. And they were stopped, but they were able to transfer their servers to another country, because what happens right now, folks, these servers can be transferred in different countries and not be spotted for months. So that's why it's very, very important we get this information out to everyone. So as we go back to ransomware, people may ask, how does this happen and what can we do to protect ourselves? There are lots of things that we can do besides doing our backups as normal and things of that nature. What happens is ransomware does not happen instantly. Cyber criminals can also, when they expose you to a virus or malware, could take months, sometimes folks even years, before you will even know that your operating system or your database has been infected by malware. So what can you do about it? There's definitely some things you can do about it. And definitely follow us here on this show and this channel. We will go over those every week of things you can do to protect yourselves from this type of cyber attack. In our next segment, folks, we're going to talk about how criminals are victimizing us as individuals, even under a pandemic. In this segment, we call it COVID-19 vaccine passports. Most Americans are getting their vaccines for COVID-19, and there's a need for verification that you've had your vaccination before you can enter a sporting event, or even travel, airlines, or go out for dinner. Showing your ID card that you have been vaccinated is one of the first steps that businesses are doing. However, cyber criminals are finding a way to take your cards and sell fake vaccine passport cards. In this clip, folks, you will see an example of that, and we'll talk about that, some suggestions how you can protect yourselves. Roll the clip.
This week, the CDC announced about 1 in 4 American adults, some 70 million of us, are fully vaccinated against COVID-19, and around a third of adults have received at least one dose. That news comes as all 50 states now have committed to opening vaccination to anyone 16 and older by next Monday. So as an increasingly vaccinated country heads back out into the world, should we have to prove we've received our shots? In our Sunday Focus, NBC political correspondent Ali Vitale looks into the idea of vaccine passports.
You ready? A new pandemic flashpoint, vaccine passports. Proof that you've gotten the dose, turning from a public health must to a potential fast track to doing just about anything.
You know, there's been lots of questions. The government is not now, nor will we be supporting a system that requires Americans to carry a credential.
The federal government may not be making it mandatory, but students returning to universities like Rutgers and Brown will need to show their vaccination records. The Miami Heat offering a vaccinated-only section for fans. And Norwegian Cruise Line became the first to say it'll require all passengers to prove they've been vaccinated, as the hard-hit cruise industry looks to return to the high seas. But back on land, the state with the busiest cruise ports saying not so fast.
We're not doing vaccine passports in Florida. It's not necessary. You have a right to live your life in our society.
Governors in several states saying no to a mandatory vaccine pass, citing civil liberties.
Where do you think the public health and civil rights balance is with something like vaccine certificates?
You do have a right to make decisions about yourself. You don't have a right to cause harm to others. And if you've got an infectious disease and you go out in public, you're not masked, you don't get a vaccine, you're really risking someone else's health and their life. You have no right to do that.
But equity and access are key. If vaccines are in short supply, these requirements could lead to a harsh disparity between people who have access and those who don't.
Congratulations.
As more people get a fair shot at doses, the benefits of vaccine verification are clear.
These things seem to me to be almost inevitable going forward, that vaccinations and proof of vaccinations are going to play some role in getting us back to our normal lives.
And even if the U.S. government won't require it, health records for international travel are already commonplace. Yellow fever documents, for instance, have long been a key to international travel, according to the World Health Organization. And for COVID-19, Israel has already rolled out its Green Pass system, where fully inoculated individuals get first access to gyms, hotels, theaters, and concerts. Back stateside, rising vaccinations and rising cases as Americans yearn to return to normal, unsure if vaccine passports are the right way to get them there.
I don't think I'd be willing to do that. It's a bit much. Yeah, it would be really huge inconvenience, but if that's the way to travel, then I'll definitely have to go get them.
And Allie joins me now live. Allie, good morning. It's good to see you. As you say, some businesses, schools, workplaces will mandate vaccination to come back or to come inside, but there's no entity really, is there, overseeing or validating these passports? So is there concern about fraud?
It's a great question, Willie. Those little 3x4 cards you get after being vaccinated, I'm lucky enough to have mine right here. Scammers are actually starting to sell fakes. That's not only illegal, but it could present problems if vaccine passports require users to upload their vaccination cards. In New York State, the first to roll out a voluntary vaccine app, they are working with IBM to ensure a more secure experience for users. This app in New York means less fumbling for paperwork and hopefully quicker processing for things like travel or ticketed events. But effectiveness remains to be seen as security concerns are still being worked through. Willie?
And as you say, part of the reason a state like Florida is banning vaccine passports. Allie, great report. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
As you can see, folks, there are cyber criminals and criminals in general that are trying to victimize people even during the pandemic. Software applications will be used on our phones for other areas as well as a way of verification. Did you know there are some states that are looking to perhaps take your driver's license and have it as part of an app on your phone? So think about this, folks. We have our smart devices, our phones, to have all types of personal identifiable information related to all of us, including like our driver's license, COVID vaccines, validations, maybe even measles and mumps. And think about this, folks. Having a validation of a vaccine is very, very important. We do that now. You have to have a vaccine if you're going to go over to the Middle East or Africa for yellow fever as well. So this is something normal to have. However, having these types of applications, we must make sure that they are safe and securing of our personal data. And we don't have hackers trying to hack in and to create false or fake passports and try to sell passports. So like recently when a woman was prosecuted for selling fake vaccine passports for COVID-19. Again, folks, it's about awareness, and that's why we're sharing this information with you and what you could do to protect yourself. So in our third segment, we call it cybersecurity tips that you could use every day and night now to protect yourself, and including what you could do with ransomware. For example, let's start for your business. What can you do to protect yourself from these types of victimizations from these criminals? Well, let's take a look at it from cybersecurity. Professionals like myself and others have suggestions that you could do to protect yourselves. One of the biggest ones right now is make sure that you have all the latest software updates from your manufacturers with your computer systems, that you make sure you have your updates done regularly, that is, on your system. And what that means, folks, that the manufacturers would find out that there are flaws in their software, and they will send out these corrections to all of their users worldwide. So that's why it's very, very important to make sure you have these corrections put on your systems to protect you from these types of vulnerabilities. 2, your routers. That's right, folks. The router that connects to the cable box and gets you into the internet, that device right there, folks, is the guard gate. It is the security guard, if you would, of anything coming in and out of your computer systems. You need to make sure that you have a passphrase and not a password. I've said that 100 times, and I'll keep telling you guys, make sure you do that. Have a passphrase, something simple that you can understand. Now at home, you need to make sure that your passphrase is something that your family can understand and not complicated where your 5-year-old can't get into your internet system or your 80-year-old relative can't get into the system. It has to be something that everybody else can understand. Also, the firmware within your router, it also needs to be updated. And how do you do that? Well, you would make sure that when you get these emails from the manufacturers of your router stating that there's a firmware update, you make sure that you update your particular router firmware. If you're not sure how to do it, definitely contact your computer specialist to help you understand, or your 12-year-old nephew or niece. They'll be able to help you out as well. But it's very, very important that you have these updates put on your router, because that's a very essential piece of equipment. Third, backups. Back up your system, folks. And when I mean by backups, folks, I mean backups that you're doing not on a daily basis. Try to do them on an hourly basis. Matter of fact, I have some clients that anytime there's a new file entered on their server, a backup is created. The reason why you want to do these backup, folks, because like I mentioned earlier, malware or these ransomware techniques can exploit your computer system and not come to fruition instantly. As you click on an email of something, they may wait 3, 4, 5 months, sometimes up to 3 years, folks. And what they're doing, they're like sleeper cells, folks. They're sitting on your hard drive and acquiring information and sending it back to the illicit server somewhere in the world, collecting data on your business. Then once they are ready to launch their attack, they'll launch the attack and lock up your system and encrypt all the files on your computer, rendering it useless to you unless you have the decryption code that you have to pay for. They're doing it at an individual level where this started, ransomware, victimizing individuals, where they would lock up their laptops and desktops at home, wanting to have a Walmart, eBay gift card sent to them. Now, they've seen that it's very, very popular and making money from it. They're extending their nefarious activities and hijacking businesses and extorting money from large corporations into the millions of dollars. As you can see from videos that we've shown on this show, there's been over $70 million worth of ransomware attacks that have launched against American and U.S. businesses. But there's ways we protect ourselves. If we do these little small things, we can be one step ahead of ourselves, folks, just by knowing what's going on. But again, the main cause, we need to look at the human factor. We can have the best, the most million-dollar systems, backup systems in our organization, but if our personnel is not trained properly, they'll click on a wrong button and can cause havoc to their company's computer systems. So make sure that your organization is trained. The fourth tip we're going to talk about is multi-factor authentication. You guys may be aware of this. A lot of times when you log into Google or Amazon to order products or services, you're asked to verify a code that is sent to either your smartphone or email. This is called two-tier authentication. There are other ones. Some companies use dongles that are little devices that have an encrypted number, and that number is used as a way to get into your website or your organization if you're working from home, for employees who are working from home. Fingerprint recognition, yeah, that's old school. As the millennials will say, that's 5 minutes ago. We don't have that anymore. The hackers have found a way to scan your fingerprints now and use it as a way to get past your entries into certain websites. Facial recognition is the other one. And again, it has its flaws as well. Matter of fact, speaking of facial recognition, in upcoming episodes, we're going to talk about something called fake videos, known as deep fake, and how cyber criminals are using those techniques as a way of getting past multi-factor authentication. Bad guys, folks, only have to get it right once. Well, we have to make sure we get it right every time. So just remember that. Here are some of the things that you can do to protect yourself individually. Now, again, passwords will start from the gate. How can you protect your organization, your system, at home and at work? Your password. Make sure you have a password management system on your laptop or desktop that you have installed in your browsers to remember and encrypt your passwords, so you don't have to have the same password on every site you visit, because you must, folks, have a different password, and it should be lengthy, at least 12 to 15 characters long. Now, with that said, you're not going to write those down on a piece of paper. Please do not do that. Do not write your passwords down on a piece of paper or even have them in a spreadsheet, because once that spreadsheet is acquired by the criminal who may be sitting in wait on your laptop or reading all your files, they're looking for this spreadsheet. And if they find it, your spreadsheet with your username, the website you visit, and your password, that document, spreadsheet document you have created as a way of ways that you can remember your passwords, has become currency, folks. That spreadsheet can be sold on a darknet for thousands of dollars from criminals who would buy that information. That's your data. Even a piece of paper you write it down on. Also, you create a currency. Do not do this. Use a password management system to protect your data and information on your systems. Again, it will encrypt all of your user IDs and passwords and make sure this data cannot be shared with other people trying to get your data. So that's the first one, and we've always stressed this in all of our shows, and we're stressed again, that's the first thing, a line of defense you can do, is a strong password. Your Wi-Fi connections. When you are out in hotspots, folks, even at a friend's visiting and you're using their Wi-Fi, make sure you have a VPN. That stands for Virtual Private Network. As of today, we're talking VPNs, folks. Cybersecurity researchers, as myself, we're looking at other ways to protecting data beyond VPNs, because hackers are showing that they are looking at vulnerabilities within even the VPN systems. But for now, VPN is something you should have on your smart device when you're out in a coffee shop, or you are working at a hotel room and you need to have access to your company data, or you're on a browser with personal identifiable information that you need to protect. These are just some of the things that we recommend that you need to do to protect yourself. We talked about business and we talked about individuals. Now next we're going to go spend a little bit of time and go over two little emails that I've gotten from viewers of our show. We have our friend Leslie from Atlanta. She writes, let's see, how can I avoid fake friends requests? Fake friends requests. Oh yeah, we talked about last week. Yes, this week we're talking about how you can, let's see, oh here we go. Jill, yes, Jill's from Tacoma. Jill from Tacoma asked about the T-Mobile data breach. What was stolen and what can you do? Okay folks, T-Mobile had a major data breach that happened a couple months ago. But folks, yes, I'm giving you this look. Folks, T-Mobile also had 4 other data breaches 3 years ago, where they lost millions of data 3 years ago. It's almost every year T-Mobile's going through a data breach. But this data breach, folks, was absolutely like opening up a candy store to criminal kids, all right? Information that was stolen was absolutely incredibly serious and sensitive. Everything from credit card numbers to birth dates to your addresses to so your social security number, information that can be used to establish credit in someone else's name and they can sell on the darknet. So what does T-Mobile and companies like this that realize they have data breaches do? They'll offer their victims up to 2 years of credit monitoring service, which is good to have versus having nothing. However, you need to have that more than 2 years credit monitoring service. As a matter of fact, I would suggest, and other cybersecurity experts as well would suggest, you would lock your credit and freeze it where anyone cannot use your social security number to obtain any sort of credit, new credit accounts created. So definitely looking at, if you are a T-Mobile user, definitely lock or freeze your credit and check your credit report. Check it quarterly to see if you have any suspicious activity in your credit. If you do, definitely fight it and report it to the credit monitoring services. Our last one is from Lauren. Lauren is from Idaho Falls. Lauren, oh yes, Lauren's a listener that heard me in an interview I did on Nights Over Las Vegas radio show in Las Vegas, as you asked about Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin safe, and what is it? Bitcoin, folks, is cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is one of the new currencies. It's one of 2,000 different cryptocurrencies that are available right now, but Bitcoin is the largest. Should you invest in it? It depends, folks. You need to, first of all, I would like to say that you need to talk to your financial advisor to see if this type of investment suits your personal needs. But as far as technically, Bitcoin is one of the coins that is flourishing. Right now, it's over $46,000 per coin. I remember 7 years ago when it was $1. Now it's $46,000. One of the first items purchased from Bitcoin was a pizza from Domino's, right? They pay for it in Bitcoin. Well, now countries in South America are using and accepting Bitcoin as a form of currency for goods and services. So yes, it is definitely increasing. It's something you should look at and research and investigate. Start small. There's one company I can recommend you take a look at. It's not one of my sponsors, but it's called Coinbase. And definitely with Coinbase, you could start out small and get into Bitcoin and see if you like it. If it's something that you feel that is good for you and fits your financial needs, definitely take a look at it. But the biggest thing, folks, is to be aware and do your research on it. We hope you like our show this week, folks. Offer you a lot of advice on cybersecurity awareness, tips to protect yourself. Again, if you'd like to find out more, definitely contact me. You can start by sending me emails at mjackson@mjcc.com. That's mjackson@mjcc.com. Or give me a phone call at 702-868-0808, and we'll talk about tools and consultations you can do to protect yourselves. Every week, folks, here at Cybersecurity Awareness TV, we offer these tips for you. You can also find me on Twitter and on Facebook. Remember, folks, subscribe, like, and listen. Thank you, folks. We'll see you next week. Hi, folks. Technology Review is a show that provides information on cybersecurity awareness, education, tips, and information to protect you and your business from the fastest growing crime of the 21st century and identity theft. But folks, this takes a lot of time and research. But this is where you come in. Be a Patreon at patreon.com/Mack Jackson Jr. and you can help us help you identify ways that can protect yourselves from identity theft and fraud.